Welcome to the Tim Booker Book Sharing channel. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our updates. Let's explore the world of books together.
Today, I want to talk about a book called The Art of Risk. The reason I want to recommend this book is related to a personal experience of mine. At the age of 40, my family and I made an important decision to move to a strange city and start a new life. This decision meant that my family and I would face great uncertainty and risk in the future. And I have always been a person who seeks stability and avoids adventure. I never buy stocks or funds, and I don't leave my comfort zone rashly in life and work. I always have to be fully prepared before I try something new. At the age of 40, I suddenly had the urge to take risks, which confused me. I once wondered if my teenage rebellion came late. I would also examine my life. The road I have traveled in the past 40 years has been relatively smooth. Is this the result of seeking stability? If I were a more adventurous person, would my life be better or worse? It was in this state of confusion that I opened the 140,000-word book, The Art of Risk. Interestingly, I found that the author of this book, Kayt Sukel, had similar problems to me. Kayt Sukel is a columnist for Scientific American. She holds degrees in cognitive and engineering psychology from Carnegie Mellon University and Georgia Tech. Unlike me, Sukel spent the first half of her life courting adventure. From the time she was a toddler, she was fearless. As an adult, she climbed mountains, swam with sharks, trekked through the wilderness, and even backpacked through the Middle East and Africa with her newborn son. But then Sukel turned 40 and found herself becoming a creature of habit. The most exciting thing she had to look forward to each week was the new episode of her favorite TV show. She even found herself lacking the courage and confidence to embark on a new romantic relationship. Sukel was troubled by this change. She felt like she had become a bystander in her own life, rather than an active participant. So, like me, Sukel also began to ask himself, which one can bring a better life, playing it safe or taking risks? If one has to choose one of the two, how can one avoid losses? After all, people of middle age not only need to make themselves happier, but also need to raise children, take care of parents, repay housing loans, and save for retirement funds, each of which is a heavy responsibility. Many times, what we fear is not the risk itself, but the worry that the changes it causes will affect our ability to assume responsibility. After 4 years of thinking and academic interviews, Sukel finally wrote the English version of The Art of Risk in 2016. This time, she completely understood. Sukel tells us that adventure sounds mysterious. But in fact, not only buying stocks, participating in extreme sports, starting a business and opening a store are adventures, but also any behavior or decision that may lead to negative consequences is an adventure. In this way, work decisions are adventures, falling in love is an adventure, and raising children is even more adventurous. All the big and small decisions in life actually have an adventurous element. The so-called adventure or stability is actually a false proposition. Because seeking stability may also bring negative consequences, it is also an adventure. What we should really care about is how to turn adventure into an opportunity that benefits us. Of course, to know what to do, you must first figure out why. In this book, The Art of Risk, Sukel first explains from the perspective of neuroscience and psychology how the brain works when making decisions, and under what circumstances it tends to take risks. Then, Sukel also interviewed many extreme athletes, investment experts and surgeons, looking for answers on how to control risks and achieve the best results from these people who need to take risks frequently. No matter you are a cautious person or someone who is willing to take on challenges, the book, The Art of Risk, can help you better understand your own decision-making process and provide valuable case studies. The American New Scientist magazine's recommendation for this book is, "This book is a call to all of us. Let us seize the opportunity and take wiser risks in life." Next, I will introduce the main content of this book in 3 parts. First, let's answer a common question. When it comes to adventure, people generally feel that they are making decisions based on their feelings. So how does our brain complete this decision-making process? In the second part, I will analyze for you whether the so-called adventurous spirit is innate or acquired. In the third part, I will summarize some practical suggestions for you according to Sukel's narration and see how we can use adventure wisely to make wiser life choices. 1. How does the brain make decisions? As a person who seeks stability, I have always envied those who have an adventurous spirit. I believe you have experienced this kind of envy too. Many literary works, movies, and dramas praise the spirit of adventure. From the Greek hero Achilles in the Homeric epic to today's great entrepreneurs like Jobs and Musk, we have always assumed that so-called heroes should dare to take risks and face difficulties. In our daily life, we also say, high risk brings high return. The brave wins when the road is narrow. On the contrary, looking forward and backward, does not seem to be a good word. We believe that the reason why some people can get a lot of wealth, a happy family life, and a socially admired status is that they have the spirit of adventure and the courage to face risks. However, it seems that the concept of adventurous spirit is difficult to quantify. We have all had this experience. When we look back on a major decision in our lives, we can't seem to figure out what prompted us to take that crucial step. Sometimes, when we see successful people making extraordinary achievements because they dared to take risks, we blame ourselves and say, why am I not that kind of person? Am I not destined to take risks? But the author Sukel said that there is no such thing as destiny in the world. Whether a person is inclined to take risks when making decisions is actually determined by brain science. In our brain, the part responsible for judging risks is called the mesolimbic pathway. This pathway consists of 3 parts. The first part is called the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia, an organization close to the brainstem, also has a more famous name, the lizard brain. What does this mean? It turns out that hundreds of millions of years ago, some marine life came ashore in search of a more favorable living environment. These marine life are the ancestors of human beings. From marine life to human beings, there are several stages in between, such as amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. Among them, in the reptile stage, the brain evolved the basal ganglia, which was inherited by the newly emerged species. Therefore, the basal ganglia is also called the reptile brain or lizard brain. From this history, you can guess that the lizard brain is only responsible for some of the most instinctive desires, such as eating, mating, and companionship. To the brain, these are the strongest temptations hidden in nature. Once the external environment releases these signals, the lizard brain system will be quickly awakened. However, it is obviously extremely dangerous to make decisions entirely by the lizard brain. For example, in primitive society, human beings needed to go out hunting in order to obtain the protein necessary for survival. The act of hunting is driven by the lizard brain. However, if during the hunting process, people only rely on instinct and do not observe the environment, they may be attacked by fierce beasts and lose their lives. In a civilized society, in order to maintain basic order and stability, we need to control our instincts even more. At this time, the brain starts a second organization to participate in decision-making. This organization, called the prefrontal cortex, is unique to intelligent creatures like humans. Its function is to judge, reason, and inhibit. As the saying goes, look before you leap. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain responsible for looking. It's connected to the lizard brain by neurons that pass messages back and forth. When the lizard brain wants to follow its instincts, the prefrontal cortex steps in and considers more complex factors, like long-term goals and consequences, before the instinct can cause any damage. For example, scientists in the United States once conducted an experiment. They had 2 groups of subjects play a gambling game. One group played normally, while the other group had their prefrontal cortexes zapped with magnetic pulses. They found that when the magnetic pulses made the prefrontal cortex more active, the people playing the game were much more cautious and less willing to take risks. But when the prefrontal cortex was inhibited, the people were more likely to take big risks, even when the odds were stacked against them. If you think of the brain as a car, the lizard brain is the gas pedal and the prefrontal cortex is the brake. You need both of them to drive safely. In addition to these 2 structures, the brain's decision-making is also influenced by the intervention of the limbic system. The so-called limbic system is mainly divided into 4 parts. One is the hippocampus, which is the brain's memory center. The second is the amygdala, which is responsible for evaluating real-time situations, perceiving fear and anxiety. The third is the anterior cingulate gyrus, which helps us learn from past experiences. The fourth is the insula, which is responsible for emotional regulation. It can be said that the limbic system is like a super server. It integrates human emotions, feelings, experiences, and other data, and calls them at any time during the decision-making process. Upon hearing this, you may feel a bit strange. We often say that when making decisions, we must be rational. Wouldn't it be bad to use emotional data? In fact, it is not. In the decision-making process, the brain's judgment of risk is very complex and diverse. The author Sukel gave an example. There is a chemist named Gale, a typical science and engineering man. He believes in one principle. For any choice, data analysis must be done first, and the with the highest success rate must be screened out before action can be taken. But it was this Gale who would go to the casino from time to time to have a little fun. During this process, he was particularly calm and not nervous at all. Sukel asked Gale, "Why are you so calm? Is it because you calculated in advance that you would definitely win money?" Gale answered honestly, it really wasn't. He said that every gambling game has a different probability of winning. In the long run, gamblers must win less and lose more. And Gale's favorite game is the double dice game, which is especially easy to lose. Knowing that he is likely to lose money, why is he not nervous? Gale explained that when he played this game, there would be a group of people around him watching, cheering together, and sighing together. This made him feel very happy and enjoyable. For this feeling, he would rather risk losing money. You see, in this example, Gale's brain incorporates emotional factors into the decision-making process, overwhelming the cold data of winning or losing probability. Data is rational, but data does not know the game experience of human beings. It cannot estimate emotional value, and it cannot control the operation of the brain alone. Upon hearing this, you may have understood. The midbrain limbic pathway, composed of the lizard brain, the prefrontal cortex, and the limbic system, is actually a super probability computer. It connects human desires, reason, and emotion, and then begins to calculate, how many options do I have? For each option, what is the reward and what is the risk? In the process of calculation, the three major components will check and balance each other. The fastest emerging instincts will be constrained by reason and experience. Overly cautious ideas will be stimulated by desires and needs. In this way, it can be said that the brain's design and decision-making mechanism is quite ingenious. But here comes the problem. Although the three major components are always pulling each other, they are not necessarily always in a state of balance. Affected by genes and development, some people's prefrontal cortex is particularly developed, while others have a stronger limbic system, which will affect their decision-making style. In addition, the role of acquired intervention is also very large. In 2014, a medical study in the United States found that if a person drinks alcohol for a long time, his prefrontal cortex will suffer irreversible structural damage. The patient will become more impulsive and unable to weigh the pros and cons rationally. This is equivalent to the chip of the probability computer being faulty. 2. Is adventurousness innate or learned? After talking about so much knowledge related to the brain, what you want to figure out the most is probably the ultimate question. Adventurous spirit, is it innate? The answer given in this book is, the influence of innate factors is very large, but not 100%. For example, there is a gene in the human body called DRD4, commonly known as the adventure gene. This gene contains a special dopamine receptor, called the D4 receptor. The D4 receptor can control the dopamine secretion level of the mesolimbic pathway, especially the dopamine secretion level of the lizard brain. As we all know, dopamine, a chemical substance, can make people feel happy. If the lizard brain, the accelerator of the brain, produces a particularly large amount of dopamine, we will become abnormally excited, more inclined to take risks for immediate benefits, and regardless of the consequences. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, is a common mental disorder that affects people's ability to focus, control impulsive behaviors, and manage their time and activities. People with ADHD may have difficulty paying attention, staying on task, and following instructions. They may also be hyperactive and impulsive, and may have difficulty controlling their emotions. The exact cause of ADHD is unknown, but it is thought to be caused by a combination of genetic and environmental factors. ADHD is often treated with medication and behavioral therapy. American scientists studied this phenomenon and found that people with ADHD have a variant of the DRD4 gene called 7R. This variant causes the brain to secrete a large amount of dopamine in a short period of time when stimulated by external stimuli, causing the lizard brain to work at full capacity. As a result, the other two parts of the brain do not have time to start up before they are carried away by the lizard brain. Not only people with ADHD, but also people with the 7R variant in the adventure gene are more aggressive than average in sports, financial activities, and socializing. When a 7R variant carrier goes skiing, he is more willing to do some dangerous and difficult moves, even if he gets hurt. Therefore, the 7R variant also has an exclusive nickname, called the curiosity gene. The question arises, do only people who carry the novelty-seeking gene have an adventurous spirit? The answer is no. The author Sukel had her genes tested and found that although she has always been an extreme sports enthusiast, she does not carry the 7R variant. In other words, there is only a correlation between genes and adventurous spirit, not a determination. Whether it is the adventure gene or the novelty-seeking gene, it only creates a single variable, not a final say. Judging from the brain's decision-making process, it is influenced by hundreds of genes, but only the adventure gene has been identified, and the role of other genes has yet to be discovered. It is obviously a narrow view to believe that the adventure gene is the only source. In addition to this innate genetic factor, the author Sukel also found that the social environment can also affect people's willingness to take risks. This may sound a bit abstract, so let me give you an example. We often hear the term masculinity. The traditional view is that most men are naturally suited to adventure, and that a spirit of adventure is part of masculinity. Women, on the other hand, are the opposite, and their nature is supposed to be quiet and shy. This is not entirely prejudice. Scientific studies have shown that adult males secrete 7 to 8 times more testosterone than adult females. Testosterone levels affect a person's physical fitness, strength, and aggression. With this innate advantage of testosterone, men naturally have more ability and drive to take risks. However, what we are talking about here is just a general situation. When it comes to each gender, and even each individual, their testosterone levels vary greatly. More than 20 years ago, people in the sports world generally believed that extreme sports such as rock climbing, surfing, and parkour were only suitable for men, and that women could not withstand them in terms of physical condition and psychological quality. But as time went on, people gradually discovered that among women, there are also players with high testosterone levels who can master extreme sports. They just lack an opportunity to show themselves. Today, 30% of the athletes sponsored by some extreme sports brands in the United States are women. This change is the result of progress in social, not only in sports, but also in education, career choice, marriage, and other major life events. Women are becoming more and more proactive and adventurous. In this way, adventure is neither a male privilege nor an innate talent. Our understanding of it has been deepening. 3. How to use adventure to make wiser life choices. Now, the spirit of adventure is not a predetermined destiny. From major changes in social concepts to minor personal adjustments and interventions, everything can affect our attitude towards adventure and, in turn, determine the outcome of the adventure. So how can a smart decision-maker turn adventure into a life opportunity? Author Sukel's first piece of advice is to know thyself. In the course of writing this book, Sukel interviewed many successful adventurers, from venture capitalists and extreme athletes to special forces soldiers who had seen combat. Sukel found that these adventurers shared a common trait. They had a clear-eyed understanding of themselves. They thought about more than just which choice would yield the greatest reward in the face of a given risk. They also considered questions like, when I'm feeling stressed, am I more likely to hit the brakes or hit the gas? Under what circumstances am I most likely to make a mistake? That's because a person's risk style is often the product of a lifetime of experiences. Trying to force yourself to adopt a completely new style, even if it seems to offer greater rewards in the short term, can be a recipe for disaster. Only by finding a risk style that you're comfortable with and adjusting it as needed when circumstances change, can you avoid making the kind of all-or-nothing bets that can lead to ruin. In addition to understanding oneself, Sukel also suggests that we should think carefully about the factors that may unconsciously affect our judgment. A typical case in this regard is social circle interference. American sociologists once conducted an experiment. When a teenager is playing an adventure game, if he plays alone, the game strategy will be more conservative. However, if there are several other companions present, the player will become more radical. This is because people, especially in their teenage years, attach great importance to social relationships. Getting attention from peers is an important emotional reward for the brain. In order to get this reward, the player has the urge to take a gamble. In fact, not only teenagers, but also adults' decisions are influenced by social factors. For example, when we face major events such as marriage, investment, or job change, we often consult with acquaintances. If the choices of acquaintances are obviously the same, we ourselves are also happy to follow the crowd. But in fact, following the crowd may not be the best choice for oneself. Here we can also popularize a concept called groupthink. Yale University psychologist Irving Janis found that before the Pearl Harbor incident in 1941, U.S. President Roosevelt and his staff received a lot of intelligence that Japan might launch an undeclared war. Why didn't they believe it? Because Roosevelt and the senior officials he personally selected were all strong-willed and extremely self-confident people. Everyone influenced each other and reinforced the prejudice that Japan would not dare to go to war, and did not consider more complete variables. Even if officials at a lower level had ideas, they would not dare to risk confronting their superiors who were in the same position, and could only give up independent judgment. This is a typical case of groupthink affecting the quality of decision-making. Another factor that we easily overlook is emotion. As mentioned earlier, emotional value is an important indicator when evaluating the benefits of different choices. However, emotions can not only please people, but also coerce and even blind them. Impulse buying is an example. When people throw things into their e-commerce shopping carts, the sense of joy in their hearts is real. But it also makes you forget that after buying, the credit card has to be repaid. In this scenario, overly excited emotions hinder our ability to make rational analysis. At this time, you need to work hard to activate your cerebral cortex to counterbalance the overactive lizard brain. In addition to the above two suggestions, Sukel also reminds us that successful adventurers are often excellent planners. She heard a golden sentence from a psychologist: successful adventurers think carefully and prepare well. The reason why they keep adventuring is to achieve long-term goals. In contrast, unsuccessful adventurers only focus on immediate results. So how do you plan for adventure? Sukel consulted a neurosurgeon named Baskin. Coincidentally, when I was a reporter, I also heard a neurosurgeon describe his work. He said that every day he was walking on thin ice. Because in the field of neurosurgery, there are too many uncertainties. Two patients with the same type of brain tumor may have different ages, physical fitness, and medical histories, so the treatment plans may be completely different. If an accident occurs during the operation, whether to continue or terminate it, both choices are risky. This is a huge test for the doctor. How does Dr. Baskin, an American doctor, train himself to face such high pressure and high-risk work? He talked about 3 experiences. The first is to be well prepared psychologically and manage expectations. Baskin said that successful surgeons often have deep confidence in their abilities, but they will use a healthy fear to balance this confidence. No matter how experienced a doctor is, he needs to stay vigilant psychologically and remind himself at all times. Surgery is risky, and some unexpected or even catastrophic events will definitely happen. Setting reasonable expectations can help people stay emotionally stable and deal with problems more rationally when facing a crisis. Baskin's second piece of advice is to train and prepare thoroughly. Preparation for surgery is like a dancer's rehearsal, and every detail needs to be taken care of. Baskin's own habit is to repeatedly rehearse the entire procedure in his mind, considering all the possible problems that may arise. What if an artery ruptures? What kind of clamp should be used to stop the bleeding then? If the clamp punctures the artery, what kind of suture should be used to suture it? What if the size of the suture is not suitable? Baskin will not only think 1 step ahead, he will think 3, 5, or even 10 steps ahead. The act of calculating a contingency plan is realized by the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Baskin rehearses the contingency plan in his mind, which is actually through deliberate practice, allowing the prefrontal cortex to mature and form a response mechanism similar to muscle memory. In this way, once an accident really happens, the brain will not be blank. It can call the prepared plan from the database to deal with the danger. Not only old hands like Baskin, but every doctor will experience countless such trainings in his career. In medical school, instructors often ask students, "What would you do if this happened?" The repeated bombardment with hypothetical questions will make advanced planning a second nature for young doctors, allowing their prefrontal cortex to gradually adapt to dealing with errors and uncertainties. It can be said that successful adventurers are rarely born, they are almost all trained. Learning to face failure is also part of self-training. Baskins always remembers that he once made a big mistake on the operating table. At that time, he was performing an aneurysm resection. As soon as the scalpel cut open the tumor, a blood vessel of the patient ruptured. At that time, his brain seemed to suddenly power off, and he was stunned in place, completely unable to remember the steps he had rehearsed in advance. Fortunately, other doctors came to the rescue in time, quickly sutured the blood vessels, and saved the patient. After the operation, Baskin's heart rate soared to 190, and he was completely collapsed in a cold sweat. At this time, the instructor told him, "Tomorrow morning, there will be another aneurysm resection surgery, and you will still be the chief surgeon. You have to re-experience that environment, face your previous fears and panic, and learn to deal with them properly in order to grow into a real doctor." Baskin's third piece of advice is that if you decide to embark on an adventure, you might as well break down the big goal into a series of small goals. As the saying goes, you have to eat one bite at a time. The advantage of doing this is that every time you complete a small goal, your brain receives a certain incentive signal, which keeps its excitement level at its best. The so-called optimal level means that the brain is neither too excited nor too quiet. In this state, the mesolimbic pathway can always stay focused and better mobilize experience, intuition, and habits to help us make the right decisions. Another advantage of setting small goals is that it is convenient to judge the situation and control the overall situation. Baskin said that for a neurosurgeon, it may be more important to know when to stop the operation than to complete the operation step by step. Sometimes, when 2/3 of a brain tumor is removed, the pressure on the patient's brain is reduced and the swelling is eliminated. At this time, if the patient's physical strength or physical condition is poor, the doctor should evaluate the situation in time and decide whether to stop the operation. If he hadn't planned this 2/3 small goal in advance, he would have to do it hard, and the result might be dangerous to the patient. What does a brain surgery have in common with our everyday life? A high-stakes operation is nothing but a collection of improvised actions, says Baskin. In fact, so are many things in our lives. They are ventures, and they can be designed and prepared for. Okay, that's all for the main content of this book, The Art of Risk. In my life, I will probably never participate in extreme sports, nor will I take out all my savings to make venture capital investments. I think most ordinary people should have a similar mentality to mine. But Sukel reminds us that adventure is not always about life and death, nor does it have to be linked to the gains and losses of huge wealth. A smart and moderate adventure can be changing jobs, cultivating a new hobby, traveling to an unfamiliar place, or making a new friend. The meaning of adventure lies in challenging oneself and accumulating wisdom. It ultimately points to our life experience, which is to make a finite life as fulfilling as possible through continuous exploration. Sukel's book also helps us further understand how to think about the opportunities and risks that life offers, what we can gain, and what we might miss. In future decision-making, you can also use the advice provided in the book to learn how to adjust yourself, develop good decision-making habits, and ultimately make wise personal choices. That's all for the essence of this book.
Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom and practice, achieve our financial goals, and create a better future together. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.